Hello, juniors, and welcome to Act 3 of The Crucible. I've got a couple of notes that I want you to get for this act, and here they are. Okay, first off, the setting. The setting of Act 3 is at a meeting house, which is being pretty much a makeshift courtroom. So we have Judge Hathorne, and he is accusing Martha Corey of reading fortunes and harming children. So remember, Giles is feeling pretty guilty here because he's the one who's mentioned that Martha was reading strange books. But Giles also knows that if the Coreys are put into jail and found guilty, that they will lose their land, and that's why Giles here thinks Putnam is kind of up to this. Remember, Putnam, he's pretty greedy, and he wants all the land he can get. So Giles has always proclaimed that Martha is innocent. Next we have Francis Nurse. Francis Nurse has an interesting part here because this is his first time to actually speak up, and he asserts that the girls are fraudulent. He thinks they're lying. He thinks this is the first time in court that somebody has said this. So Francis Nurse is kind of planting that seed that something's not right here. Also about this time, this is when John Proctor brings Mary Warren into the courtroom to read her deposition. So the basis of her deposition is that the girls, that they saw no spirits, and that they've pretty much been lying. So this is all what they call pretense. And remember pretense, think of pretend. So pretense or things that are made up. So Danforth, our other judge here, refuses to listen to this. So kind of like Paris, he is pretty sensitive to his reputation. So Danforth, his kind of role in this play is to see basically how many people he can put into jail. So he thinks that John Proctor, Mary Warren, Francis Nurse, Giles, and Martha Corey all want to undermine the court. And basically, in the end, he does not want to look like a fool. So that is kind of why he is sending them all away. Okay, we can already tell that Danforth really doesn't like John Proctor very much. But Danforth does tell Proctor some very interesting information at this point. He tells Proctor that Elizabeth is pregnant. And he really doesn't believe her because he thinks that Elizabeth just wants to get out of her hanging. And so get out of hanging. And this is where John Proctor makes the very strong statement that Elizabeth never lies. And this little bit of information will be helpful later on. The court at this time, you need to know, everybody starts accusing everybody else. So it starts to get out of hand. With the accusations. 91 people are brought in because they wrote a deposition about some of the other women, and everybody at this point is just going a little nuts. So again, John Proctor brings up Mary Warren and her deposition. Basically, in that deposition, again, there's no Satan and no spirits. it was probably worded differently, but this is the bottom line, that there was no chorusing with Satan and there was no spirits. And she makes a very interesting comment that her friends are lying. So Hale kind of jumps in at this point, and he tells John Proctor that he might need a lawyer because of all the accusations. And Danforth pretty much says, no need. Because the crimes here are what he calls invisible crimes. So no one can witness it. So it's all between the victim and the witch. And as we're kind of seeing, everybody is always looking at the victim and they're right. It's also interesting to note that Hale is starting to see how crazy everything is becoming. So note how he is acting in this act. Okay, continuing on with this act. Danforth studies Mary Warren's deposition. The whole thing about there's no Satan, no spirits, and it also states that Mary Warren has lied to the court. So Danforth decides to bring in Abigail and the other girls to see what they have to say about this situation. So Abigail, of course, is going to deny any wrongdoing, and she's going to claim that Mary Warren, just wants to get them back. So she's going to deny all the claims. And this is kind of where Abigail's character is brought in or questioned by John Proctor, because John Proctor, remember, is still in the courtroom. And he's listening to everything everybody is saying. So this time he's starting to witness Abigail turning on Mary Warren, because at this point she has to. She can't say, yeah, we all lied, da-da-da. Mary Warren is pretty much being forced by John Proctor. Even though she is telling the truth, she just doesn't want to say it in court. So Abigail's character is being brought into light because John Proctor claims that she, not Tituba, was the one who brought all the girls into the forest. Each of them had a reason to be in that forest, and she's the one who kind of, brought them all together and made them do this. So at this point, Abigail turns on Mary Warren and starts claiming that Mary Warren's spirit is out. Because remember, right now, there's such mass hysteria about witches and spirits that the only way Abigail can assert her innocence is start saying that Mary Warren is, bringing her spirit out for everybody. So again, John Proctor's listening to all this, and that's where he lashes out. And he then tells the court about the affair with Abby. So he can't help it. He has to say this at this point to discredit her character. He has to show the court that she's been lying to everybody. Okay, we're coming to the climax of the story. So John Proctor has just proclaimed that he and Abigail have had an affair. He's also stated earlier that his wife never lies. So Danforth has to figure out who's lying and who's not. So Elizabeth had already left the courtroom, so she is brought back in. So she has no idea that John Proctor has admitted that he had the affair. So Danforth needs the evidence from Elizabeth that this is true. And this is so right straight out of a movie or a soap opera. So Elizabeth wants to save her husband. And she's at this point where she will do anything. So she actually lies. And remember, this is for the first time in her life. And says, that he never had the affair with Abby. So remember, John Proctor's just said that he has. And here's Elizabeth saying he hasn't. So now the court has to charge John Proctor and put him into jail for falsehood. And falsehood is basically lying to the court. So at this point, Elizabeth realizes what she has done, and she can't take that back. Abby, this whole while, is thinking that she's going to get John Proctor back. She, at this point, knows that there is no chance of that, and that her reputation now is is at hand. So again, this whole little ugly triangle between Elizabeth, John Proctor, and Abby comes to the climax of the story. And Hale, remember, Reverend Hale is seeing all of this. So he full-heartedly believes John Proctor at this point. He thinks it's all ridiculous. He thinks everything, all the girls are lying. So he's pretty much on their side. So he denounces Abby. Remember, Mary Warren is still in the courtroom as well. So Abby, lashes out against Mary Warren. And all the girls kind of turn on her. And she breaks because it's clear case of peer pressure here. She breaks because she doesn't want all the girls to be mad at her. So she then accuses John Proctor of doing the devil's work. So that was just one more thing against John Proctor at this scene. So at the end of the scene, John Proctor and Giles go to jail. And that's how we're left with that scene.